The goal of my personal project was to create a history game for PYP kids to learn the history of downtown McKinney. Now, I did not come up with this project the first time. I actually went through 4 to 5 project ideas until I finally decided on this one. And I would never have chosen this project topic for myself. It took the influence of others for me to actually choose this topic. But once I really started digging into the information that the project entailed, I found that it was very, very interesting, and that's how I came to the conclusion of making a game so PYP kids could play and grow up learning this information that they wouldn't normally know. The global context that I related to my personal project was cultural and personal expression, and this entails realizing one's individuality and the origin of where they come from, and embracing it and really learning and wanting to know more about it. And I feel like the history of downtown McKinney isn't something that's taught in schools and something that a lot of people don't really care about, and that was one of the goals of my project, was to change that, especially with the younger generation who is growing up thinking that video games and phone screens are all there is, and I wanted to change that stereotype. So I chose the global context because it entails really grasping your individuality and the origin and the history of where you come from and where you live, and I think that really relates to my project. With regards to what made my project personal, I had a very deep family connection to the historical part of my project. My grandma, who is a published author, has written many historical books about small towns, mostly on the east side of Texas. But when she found out that I had chosen this topic, she was ecstatic and was willing to help me do anything to complete it. So I feel like that's what made my project really personal, was having the strong family connection with my grandma, and then also really learning about the history of the place that I have lived in for 15 years. When talking about what MYP has helped me with throughout my project, I did not learn any of the historical or research-based information from my classes because the history of downtown McKinney is not taught in schools, but rather I learned more about research skills, communication skills, and social skills that will be helpful to me completing my project that will be further explained later on. Okay, when talking about the research skills that I gained throughout the project, I think that was the skill that I developed most, because most of my project was research-based, having to research every area and every place that I wanted to include in my game. When I started the project, my research skills were rudimentary and mediocre because I had never really had to dig into different sources and really find out and pull out important information. And I think that's exactly what my project taught me. It taught me how to use reliable resources and how to identify those and how to make sure to pull out the important information and not fluff out my answers and not fluff out my research. And I shared my research skills with my peers by kind of guiding them along the way throughout their own projects. I had a few friends who had research-based projects similar to mine, and they were having difficulties and troubles really pulling out the important information and really getting the main idea of the passage in the article that they were reading. And so I feel like that was my contribution to my peers, was really helping them identify the reliable sources and helping them gain the main idea, which in turn helped me develop my research skills even more. One of the criteria or goals that I set for myself throughout the duration of my project was to create an online and an offline version of my game, so these students can play it in and out of the classroom. And I developed that at the beginning of my project because I felt like it was important for students to really be able to utilize my product and make it useful for them and adaptable to their situation. Another goal I set for myself was to also create a website. I wanted to create this website so I could summarize the goal of my project, and so people can look at it and really understand what the personal project is and show how I got to my final product. One major change that I made to the criteria of my project that I set in the beginning was creating the online version of the game. About mid-March, I realized that I did not have enough time nor the technological skills required to create an online version of the game, so I had to settle with making the offline version that much better to compensate for the changes that I had to make to my criteria. I feel like I successfully met my criteria other than the changes that I made, and overall I feel like my project was successful because after exhibition I had many parents visiting my website and emailing me compliments and good graces about my project and the product I designed, that they played it with their kids and it was enjoyable and helpful to them in teaching them the histories. The timeline of my project started in mid-January when I actually came up with and decided on my topic. I created the website at the very beginning so that I can add on as I completed another criteria, or I needed to add a document or a summary of what I did. The main documentation of the duration and the process of my project is documented in my process journal, which every time I would make a new development, edit something, add something, delete something, I would put down the date and put that in my process journal so I could keep track of what I've already done and what I need to do. The evidence of product is the game board and the answer key and all the information that goes with each section of my game. That is all uploaded onto my website and in a binder so that people could see it at exhibition and they could feel and touch it and see what it entailed and how to play. The last part of the process of my project, I think near the final few days before it was due, that was really the reflection phase for me, where I would reflect on my product and the process that I took to get to the end and how I could have changed it, how I could make it better, and reflect on the skills that I learned throughout the project. When talking about the self-management skills that I had and developed throughout my project, I started with actually very poor self-management skills. I have always struggled with keeping myself on task and not procrastinating, working on things in advance, and really not leaving things to the last minute. And I learned a very valuable lesson throughout this project, which with me choosing my topic late, a few months late actually, and not having as much time to work on it, I really learned how to prioritize and how to work effectively so I can get the most out of the time that I did have to work on my project. The self-management skills that I was able to share with my peers was just encouragement and lessons to not procrastinate and to get their work done, to focus on what they were doing, because this is a very important project for our future at this school and it really shapes our education and really helps us grow. So I feel like the self-management skills were the most developed throughout this project because they started at a very low level and gradually progressed and were developed throughout the project. The product or outcome of my project was in essence the game board, the answer key, and the research guide that I created. In the report that I originally turned in, I included snapshots and document links to both my website and to my game board so that my supervisor could easily go through and see the thought process and the time that I put into my project and really be able to explore the ideas that I had. I wanted to create something tangible so people could use it to their benefits and it would be tangible for both indoors, outdoors, wherever they were, they could find a way to access my project and use it. So the evidence of my product was the game board and creating the game for the PYP kids that I was able to show them and play with them and really see the reaction. That probably didn't make any sense. Through my years in the MYP program, I learned a lot about the critical thinking skills, but it was only through this project that I encountered creative thinking skills and how important and necessary they were in the thinking process. At the beginning of my project, I was only able to utilize my critical thinking skills because those are the skills that I had been working on and that have been developed by my MYP teachers. Through this project and through having to create a game and putting myself in the minds and in the shoes of the PYP kids, which was my intended audience, I had to learn out-of-the-box thinking and creating crazy solutions to problems and really having to work through those. I helped other students with the thinking skills by guiding them along a path of creative thinking, because none of the projects that were created during this process would have been accomplished or would have been as effective without the creative thinking skills. So I taught my peers how to use those, because it was something that all of us were new to and that all of us had not really been exposed to in depth yet. I feel like communication and social skills were the skills most improved and most worked on through the MYP program. Through presentations, interviews, talking with teachers, communication and social skills were the ones that were built on the most. At the beginning of my project, I felt I had fairly strong communication, both communication and social skills. My social skills a little less developed. But through presenting to my peers and working through my projects and working with experts in the historical field and curators of museums and other McKinney residents, I developed both communication and social skills. These skills that I developed, I feel will be very useful and that I will be utilizing a lot in the DP program, because with presentations and other things like that, I felt like I learned very valuable skills that will better me in those areas in the future. With helping my peers with the communication and social skills, I actually helped several of my peers practice for their exhibition presentations and even the classroom presentations halfway through the year. Helping them with their presentations also taught me a little bit about communication skills and what works for an audience and what does not. So even with all the skills that I developed through, I felt like helping my peers was both a learning lesson for them and for me. By the end of my project, I had met most of the criteria that I set for myself. The only one that I failed to meet was the online version of the game, but I came up with a solution and worked around that by the end of it. One strength that I had throughout this project was researching and paying attention to detail. When creating the game, I always made sure to keep asking myself the questions such as, would a 5th grader enjoy this? What would a 5th grader say? And asking myself those questions and putting myself in the kids' shoes so my game was better tailored towards them. A weakness that I had in my project was definitely time management and the challenge of the time limit. Since I started my project late, since I had trouble creating and developing a topic, I did not have as much time to complete the project as I would have liked to, given that if I had more time, I probably could have gone more in depth and really dug deep into the history and included more details and created maybe even an online version if I had gotten technical help and the time and resources to do so. My voice is going crazy. Oh my goodness. Through this project, I developed as an IB learner in the areas of communication, principled, and balanced. I developed in the communication area through presenting all day on exhibition and having to tailor my presentation towards the different audiences that approached me. I developed being balanced because I had to complete this project while working on all the other summatives and assignments that I had in other classes. I also learned to be principled. I had to buckle down and complete this project because I realized how big of an impact it can have on my education in DP. This project really opened my eyes to the higher level and deeper understanding that teachers and administration will be expecting next year, and the way that I should be thinking and analyzing and approaching my solutions and coming up with solutions to overcome different problems that I will be experiencing. Through this project, I gained a deeper understanding not only of the historical part of my project, but also the process of the project and the global context that I associated with my project. I learned throughout this process different aspects and different traits that I am going to need, and how I will be needing to think and analyze in DP. I also learned about the global context through this project, and not only the single one of personal and cultural expression, but also all of them and how they relate in different areas to my project. The reflection phase of this project was probably the most difficult for me, because I had never really had to really dig deep and understand why I chose this topic, why I took the steps that I did before in any other basic research project. So that was a adventure on its own. But I also feel like it was the most important part of this project, because I was able to look back at the learner that I've become and look at how I've developed and changed throughout this process of the personal project.